What we now have is a very, very serious dislocation in the lubricant of the financial system, which is credit. Now, the analogy I always use is like a car engine. Credit is the actual oil in the engine. Now, there's a big crack, and the oil's all flowing out of the engine, so the whole engine is seizing up. So we're getting effects everywhere, and I don't think we've seen the worst of the effects, because it's going to be a rolling contagion where things happen in one market, then another, and they keep feeding back on themselves. And the other thing we haven't seen as yet, which is the really, really long-term effect, is on the real economy. Because so far it's been a financial market crisis. Eventually it'll affect things like GDP growth, employment, investment, and how people spend money. Once that occurs, what we're going to see is a new order of this particular contagion. That's what makes it much worse.
What do you think is likely, most likely to happen to the Australian economy now over the short to medium term?
I can see us going into a serious increase in unemployment, a serious economic slowdown, credit levels collapsing. We've already seen that starting to happen in the most recent figures, and a credit-driven downturn in the economy, driven largely through a collapse in retail sales, because this time round the part of society that's carrying the debt is the household sector. It was the business sector back in the 1920s and also, of course, in the 1990s. Households can't sack the kids. They can't declare themselves bankrupt anywhere near as easily as a corporation can do. So the only thing they can do to control the situation is to cut back drastically on their retail spending, and that will of course mean the retail sector is the first one to collapse.
Crows Nest is one suburb closer to the city and is about 6 kilometres from Sydney's CBD. And in 2006 it had a population of around 3,200 residents. 48% of households contain families, and 54% of families are couples without children. So again, this is a predominantly working professional suburb. Units and apartments make up 39% of properties, and semis account for 15% of residences. Rental properties make up 45% of the housing market, so this is another popular investor market.
All I want is my money and I'm out on the double. Play games if you want, but not me, no way. No way. I'll pop your bubble, and if you're bringing that I'll lay you out on the double. I'll never go down like that, no way. Right back on the double. I'll flip that coin if I have to. One thing I have to get back to, this hard work I came for. One thing I won't get paid for. Quitting that it's so painful. Hoping my luck would change, boy. Harsh words were spoken. Promise to leave that token. Money suits not so easy. Stacking my chips gonna please me. Hey, never go down like that, no way. No way. I don't want no trouble. All I
And continuing with our Lower North Shore theme, we hear from about how they're reshaping the apartment landscape in St Leonards for property investors, offering centrally located lifestyle and investment opportunities.
Stage 2 is a total of 116 apartments, so it's larger than Stage 1. 69 are one-bedroom, 36 two, and 11 three-bedroom. So there's a predominance of one-bedroom apartments, which is a little different to Stage 1. Since we launched in April, we've sold 47 apartments, with about a 40 to 60% split between investors, 40%, 60% owner-occupiers, and certainly of the owner-occupiers, the majority of being first-home buyers. Look, they start at a very affordable 407 for one bedroom, which has been, well received, as you can imagine. Even two bedrooms from 635, and three bedrooms at 1.16.
One of the risks, and it must be a political risk as well as everything else, is a bursting of the housing bubble in Australia. How likely is that?
Look, I think at some stage it is. We simply have a very expensive housing stock. On every metric that you want to compare it to, be it just absolute price gains, be it price per square metre, be it price relative to income, we have very expensive houses. And I think the problem is everybody actually thinks they're affordable. Now, I know you'll run the press report saying these are too expensive, but at the end of the day, a lot of borrowers are willing to leverage up, to get a mortgage at several times their income, to devote 10, 20, 30, 40% of their income to servicing their debt. And that's what ultimately is what pushed prices so high. And the reason people are willing to do that is that you've got a lot of borrowers out there that have never seen a recession. They always assume they can service their debt, and they've never seen house prices fall. So they think, gee whiz, I can make a lot of money by buying a second house or a third house. Once we see some job losses, once we shatter that illusion that house prices don't fall, then I think you can see substantial losses, as indeed you've seen in parts of Sydney already. Now, my very simple take on it is, the bigger the bubble, the bigger the pop, we have very expensive house prices, and I suspect they're going to fall at some stage.
By how much and when do you believe the music will stop?
Look, the absolute killer for our housing market will be when we start to see some job losses. Now, my view is that may happen next year. We'll see. Unless you think we've completely banished the economic cycle, it's a matter of when, not if.
Joe! Bill! It's coming! It's coming right for us! It's already here!
Hold on to your butts.